Section 1. The Legend of Bigfoot, a Terrestrial Mystery. In the depths of our oldest forests, along winding rivers and through ancient mountain valleys, whispers persist of a presence that is neither man nor beast. Towering, covered in hair, and with eyes said to hold an almost human intelligence, this creature has been called many names, but the most enduring is Bigfoot. The legend of Bigfoot is far older than our modern civilization. Among the tribes of the Pacific Northwest, stories of the Sasquatch go back generations. These were not tales of animals. They were accounts of a people, reclusive, intelligent, and deeply in tune with the natural world. The Salish, Haida, and other First Nations peoples described them as watchers, not monsters, giants who walked softly among the trees and vanished before a threat could approach. Some tribes held them in reverence. Others warned of their power. But none dismissed them as mere myth. As settlers moved westward across North America, their journals and campfire stories added a new layer to the lore. Stories of massive footprints in the snow, strange howls echoing in the distance, and momentary glimpses of enormous figures just beyond the lantern light. The wilderness became not only a place of danger and discovery, but mystery. Fast forward to the 20th century, and Bigfoot began to take on a more visible, if elusive, form in the public eye. In 1958, a construction crew working in Northern California discovered enormous footprints around their equipment. The term Bigfoot entered the American lexicon. But it was in 1967 that the mystery crystallized in a single unforgettable image, the Patterson-Gimlin film. Shot in Bluff Creek, California, the grainy footage shows what appears to be a large bipedal creature walking upright through a clearing. Its gait, proportions, and body language defied easy explanation. Skeptics called it a hoax. Believers saw it as the best proof yet that something truly unknown walked among us. To this day, the film remains a cultural touchstone and one of the most hotly debated pieces of cryptid evidence in existence. But it wasn't just one video. Across North America, and increasingly around the world, people continued to report sightings. In the Appalachians, the Ozarks, the Sierra Nevada, the Rockies, eyewitnesses described startlingly similar experiences: a musky odor, a feeling of being watched, a sudden silence in the forest, and then movement. A shape. A giant, hairy biped, standing upright, watching from the shadows. Yet despite the volume of reports, one thing has remained consistent: the absence of hard evidence. No bones. No bodies. No definitive DNA. How can something seen by so many leave behind so little? This absence only deepens the mystery. Is Bigfoot simply an undiscovered primate, avoiding us with cunning and instinct? Is it a relic of an earlier time, a Neanderthal cousin that adapted to hide? Or could it be something stranger? This is where the cracks in the normal narrative begin to widen. Some researchers began to notice that not all Bigfoot reports were the same. Some featured elements that didn't fit the mold of a terrestrial animal at all: unusual lights in the sky, strange electromagnetic interference, and odd behavioral patterns that defied biology. These inconsistencies opened the door to a radical new possibility. What if Bigfoot wasn't native to Earth? This idea might sound outlandish at first glance, but so did the notion of black holes, microbes, or wireless communication when they were first proposed. What we consider possible is often just a reflection of what we're used to. And so, in this journey, we will explore not only the myth and biology of Bigfoot, but the strange evidence that links it to a much broader phenomenon. From ancient lore to modern sightings, from government cover-ups to quantum speculation, we'll consider the possibility that Bigfoot may be more than just a creature in the woods. It may be a visitor. Section 2. UFOs and Hairy Humanoids, a Pattern in the Sky. It's easy to compartmentalize mysteries. We like to put phenomena into neat boxes, cryptids in one, UFOs in another, ghosts and paranormal events in a third. But reality has a way of defying our categories. And nowhere is that more apparent than in the strange intersection between Bigfoot sightings and unidentified flying objects. It began subtly. In the 1960s and 70s, reports began surfacing of UFO activity and Bigfoot encounters occurring in the same locations, often at the same time. These weren't isolated incidents. They came in waves, clusters of sightings tied together not just by geography, but by something deeper, a sense of the uncanny. Take the 1973 flap in Pennsylvania, a year that still puzzles investigators to this day. Throughout that summer and into the fall, rural parts of the state were inundated with sightings. Glowing orbs, disc-shaped crafts, pulsating lights. But then, something stranger began to emerge. People started reporting large, hairy creatures seen in the immediate vicinity of UFO activity. Witnesses described orange lights descending into fields, followed moments later by encounters with creatures standing over 7 feet tall. One farmer claimed he saw a Bigfoot-like creature holding a glowing orb. Others said the creatures vanished in flashes of light or walked directly into beams coming from the sky. Stan Gordon, a respected UFO and anomaly researcher, documented dozens of these interconnected sightings. His detailed logs from the time reveal a disturbing pattern. Where UFOs appeared, Bigfoot often followed. And not in a way that suggested coincidence. In many cases, they were part of the same event, two sides of the same inexplicable coin. This convergence challenged both communities. Cryptozoologists, eager to prove Bigfoot was a flesh-and-blood animal, were hesitant to entertain alien connections. UFO researchers, meanwhile, weren't sure what to make of an ape-like creature showing up in close proximity to highly advanced aerial technology. And so, many chose to ignore the overlap altogether. But some didn't. Some leaned into the mystery and asked the deeper question: what if Bigfoot and UFOs aren't separate phenomena? What if they're parts of a single, larger puzzle? It's not just the Pennsylvania case. Similar reports emerged from the Pacific Northwest, Ohio, and even Siberia. In 1975, in the Wasatch Mountains of Utah, campers claimed they saw a glowing object land near their site, followed by the appearance of a tall, shadowy figure with red eyes that disappeared as suddenly as it came. In Missouri, a group of teenagers witnessed a disc-shaped object flying overhead, only to later encounter a bipedal creature crossing the road in front of them, within minutes of the sighting. These encounters weren't only visual. Witnesses described a shared sensory element, a profound silence, as if the forest itself had been muted. Some felt disoriented or dizzy, as if reality had momentarily bent. Others reported missing time, gaps in memory that couldn't be explained. These are familiar symptoms in UFO abduction lore. That they show up in Bigfoot encounters only deepens the mystery. Of course, these stories remain anecdotal. There is no physical link tying Bigfoot to UFOs in a laboratory sense. No evidence shared between fields. But the weight of similar experience across decades and continents suggests something worth exploring. We must ask, if Bigfoot is real, why would its presence correlate with aerial phenomena? One theory posits that Bigfoot could be a biological component of alien exploration. A scout. A biological drone. Something adaptable to our terrain and capable of operating discreetly. the perfect observer. Large enough to intimidate, but intelligent enough to avoid detection. Perhaps it doesn't live here. Perhaps it arrives. Another theory is even more provocative. What if these creatures are not extraterrestrial in the traditional sense, but ultra-terrestrial, beings from another reality altogether, using advanced craft to cross the veil between worlds? If that's true, the Bigfoot UFO connection might be more than a coincidence. It might be a hint of a grander interdimensional system, one we've only glimpsed. Skeptics often argue that these stories are simply the product of active imaginations or folklore mingling with pop culture. And yet, many of these reports come from credible witnesses: police officers, veterans, scientists, and lifelong hunters, people with no reason to fabricate. In fact, many are reluctant to speak out at all, for fear of ridicule. But they do speak. They come forward year after year, describing scenes that feel more like science fiction than forest legend. Massive footprints leading to nowhere, lights dancing silently through the trees, and beings that seem both physical and ephemeral. As we continue our exploration, we must keep our minds open, not to accept every story as truth, but to allow for the possibility that the universe is far stranger than we imagine. And in that strangeness, Bigfoot may not be walking alone. Section 3. Indigenous Wisdom and the Star People Connection. Long before telescopes mapped the stars, and long before European settlers set foot in the Americas, the people of this land carried deep and intricate understandings of the cosmos. Among many indigenous nations across North America, the idea that we are not alone in the universe is not a modern revelation. It is an ancient truth. In the oral traditions of the Hopi, Zuni, Lakota, Salish, and numerous others, there exist accounts of beings from the sky, often called the Star People. These were not gods in the classical sense, but travelers from other realms. Some came to teach, others to observe, and some to warn. They were described not just as spirits, but as very real presences, bright, intelligent, and otherworldly. But interwoven with these tales is another presence, the hairy people. These were not always feared or demonized. In many traditions, they were considered guardians of the natural world, silent watchers who dwell at the edges of civilization, appearing only when the balance is at risk. In others, they were considered ancient beings, older than the tribes themselves, who came from the stars long ago. Among the Salish people of the Pacific Northwest, the Sasquatch, known by names such as Sasquatch or Sask-ETS, was not simply a creature of the forest. It was a people, an older, hidden people, who came from another place and chose to live apart. Some accounts even suggest that these beings could communicate telepathically, that they could appear and disappear at will. Not magic, but the use of abilities not understood by modern science. Among the Lakota Sioux, there are references to tall, hairy beings associated with sacred sites, beings who knew when people entered their territory and who could walk among the stars. The Cree and Ojibwe also speak of beings who dwell in both forest and sky, acting as go-betweens, protectors, and silent keepers of ancient knowledge. These aren't fringe beliefs. They are deeply rooted parts of complex spiritual systems that treat the earth, sky, and all life as interconnected. And in that worldview, the idea of an intelligent, non-human species coexisting with us, sometimes visible, sometimes hidden, is not strange. It's expected. What's more, these traditions often contain uncanny parallels to modern accounts of Bigfoot. The foul, musky scent, the glowing eyes, the silent movement, the ability to vanish without a trace. And, in some stories, the association with lights in the sky or strange noises that seem to come from nowhere. Could it be that the Bigfoot phenomenon is not new, but simply a continuation of something ancient? Are we witnessing the same beings our ancestors did, only through a different lens? Some researchers propose that the star people and the forest-dwelling giants may not be separate at all. Instead, they may be different manifestations of the same phenomenon, beings that travel between worlds, that operate beyond our current understanding of physics and biology. Beings that are part of a much older cosmic tapestry, one that indigenous cultures have preserved in story and ceremony. To be clear, these traditions are not meant to be appropriated or twisted for modern narratives. But they do offer something powerful, a glimpse into a worldview where humans are not the center of the universe, but a part of it, where mystery is not something to be solved, but something to be respected. And in that worldview, the idea that a being like Bigfoot could be a visitor from the stars, or perhaps a long-term resident from another place, is not wild speculation. It is part of a larger, sacred order. As we continue this journey, let us remember that not all knowledge comes from satellites and sensors. Some of it comes from stories, passed down by firelight, grounded in generations of observation, experience, and spiritual insight. Perhaps we should start listening. Section 4. The Biological Enigma. Why Bigfoot Doesn't Fit In. For over a century, those searching for Bigfoot have treated it as a missing link, a relic from a forgotten chapter of our evolutionary history. A rare species of giant ape, or perhaps a distant cousin of early humans who somehow slipped through the cracks of time, living undetected in the dense wilderness. But as time marches forward and science continues to advance, that explanation grows less satisfying. Despite thousands of sightings, countless expeditions, and the proliferation of camera technology across every corner of the globe, we still lack the most basic biological evidence. No bones. No bodies. No DNA beyond what's been attributed to bears, deer, or contamination. This absence of hard evidence isn't just unusual. It's unprecedented. Every animal, no matter how elusive, leaves behind something. A carcass. A fossil. Genetic traces in the environment. Even the most secretive creatures, like the snow leopard, the giant squid, or the okapi, have eventually been documented, studied, and confirmed. But Bigfoot remains a phantom, a recurring figure across cultures and eras that somehow resists the lens of biology. So we're left with a conundrum. If Bigfoot is flesh and blood, it is the most successful hide-and-seek player in the history of the planet. And if it's not, then what is it? Let's look at the biological oddities more closely. First, the size. Most credible reports describe a creature standing between 7 and 10 feet tall, weighing upwards of 500 pounds or more, with proportions that exceed those of any known hominid. The gait, as observed in the Patterson-Gimlin film and corroborated by expert analysis, is non-human in subtle but significant ways. Longer arms, fluid shoulder rotation, and a stride that seems too smooth for its bulk. Second, the behavior. Bigfoot is often seen alone. It doesn't seem to form social groups, build structures, or establish territories in the way primates typically do. It leaves behind few signs of habitation. No nests. No refuse. No clear migratory patterns. And yet, it always seems to be exactly where the witness is, appearing suddenly and disappearing just as fast. Then there's the uncanny silence. Numerous witnesses have reported an almost supernatural quiet preceding a Bigfoot encounter, as if the natural world momentarily pauses. Birds go silent. Insects vanish. The air feels charged. This isn't standard animal behavior. It's as if the creature brings with it a disruption in the environment itself. And perhaps most confounding of all, the apparent ability to vanish. Not just run away, but truly disappear. Tracks that stop abruptly in snow or mud. Figures seen walking behind trees that never re-emerge. No sound of retreat. No lingering scent or sign. None of this aligns with what we know about biology. Even the most advanced camouflage doesn't explain disappearing tracks. Even the smartest animal can't remain unseen across decades and continents. Something doesn't add up. This has led some researchers to propose a radical possibility. What if Bigfoot isn't a native biological species at all? What if, instead of being a holdover from Earth's past, it's a visitor from elsewhere, a being whose biology is not fully tethered to this planet? Perhaps even one whose physical presence here is only partial. A projection. A scout. A being operating at the edge of our perception, capable of interfacing with our world briefly and incompletely. This could explain why Bigfoot doesn't decay or leave behind remains. Why it doesn't behave like a normal animal. Why it appears intelligent, yet non-technological. It could also explain the technological anomalies often associated with sightings. Camera malfunctions, compass spinning, feelings of altered time. Could it be that Bigfoot is not bound by our biology because it doesn't share it? That it isn't governed by the same life-death-decay cycle as Earth's creatures because its origin lies beyond that system entirely? Even the notion of fur, so often described in sightings as thick, dark, and matted, may be misunderstood. Could it be some form of environmental suit? A biological interface? A cloaking membrane? Something designed not to keep out cold, but to shield a foreign physiology from our atmosphere? Of course, these ideas push the limits of what science currently accepts. But the scientific method itself requires that we adapt our models when the evidence no longer fits. And in the case of Bigfoot, the traditional biological model is beginning to fray at the seams. What remains is a mystery not of zoology, but of reality itself. If Bigfoot is here, but not fully here, then our understanding of biology must expand to include the possibility of beings that do not operate strictly within it. And that opens the door, not just to new theories about Bigfoot, but to entirely new paradigms of life. The forest may be holding more than just shadows. It may be hiding a visitor, one whose biology is not ours to dissect, but to question, and whose very presence asks us to rethink what it means to be real. Section 5. Cloaking, Silence, and the High Strangeness Factor. There's a recurring thread in Bigfoot encounters that can't be ignored, one that strays far from zoology and instead touches the strange and unexplainable. It's not just the sight of the creature itself, but how it appears, how it behaves, and most curiously, how it disappears. Witnesses often describe an overwhelming silence moments before a sighting. Not the peaceful kind, but a charged, unsettling stillness, like the forest itself has taken a breath and stopped. Birds fall quiet. Insects vanish. Even the wind seems to pause. Many describe the sensation as being watched, not by eyes, but by something deeper, something that knows you're there before you know it. This is followed by a visual, the shadow, the shape, the towering figure in the trees. But what happens next defies natural behavior. The creature may step behind a tree and never come out. Or footprints may lead into soft mud only to vanish a few strides later. In some cases, the figure is there one moment and simply gone the next. No sound, no sign, just absence. These aren't isolated reports. This phenomenon, often referred to in paranormal circles as high strangeness, has been documented for decades. In fact, it forms a distinct subgenre of Bigfoot encounters, one where the creature behaves more like a ghost, a mirage, or a projection than a flesh-and-blood animal. Researchers have attempted to frame this in different ways. Some suggest that Bigfoot may possess natural cloaking abilities, an advanced form of camouflage that allows it to bend light around its body. Biologists have observed this in cephalopods, which can change color and texture in milliseconds. Could Bigfoot have evolved something far more advanced? Or, more radically, could it be using technology, not evolved biology, to vanish? Others propose that Bigfoot operates partially outside of our visual spectrum. Many creatures, including bees and snakes, see ultraviolet or infrared light that we cannot. If Bigfoot exists on a frequency slightly outside of human vision, it could explain why some people see it while others don't, even when standing in the same area. Still others believe the explanation is even more complex, that Bigfoot may be slipping between dimensions or vibrating between planes of existence. This idea, while speculative, draws from theories in quantum mechanics where particles can exist in multiple states or locations at once. If consciousness or biological entities could access this kind of mobility, then vanishing may not be magic, it may be movement. And then there's the emotional impact. Witnesses frequently report being overwhelmed by fear, confusion, or even nausea, responses not typical of seeing an animal. Some feel as though their thoughts are being read. Others report a sudden onset of dread, often described as irrational but deeply physical. In a few rare accounts, witnesses hear voices in their head, short phrases, warnings, or emotions that don't feel like their own. These encounters resemble what people experience in UFO contact reports or during episodes of sleep paralysis, the merging of physical reality with a psychological or even psychic dimension. The boundaries between what's real and what's perceived begin to blur. It's as though Bigfoot is not only hiding its body, but interfering with perception itself. In some sightings, electronic devices fail. Cameras refuse to focus. Batteries drain instantly. Compasses spin. All phenomena well documented in areas of UFO activity and other anomalous hotspots. This suggests that whatever Bigfoot is, wherever it comes from, it brings with it an energetic disruption, a ripple in the local reality field. Skeptics often dismiss these stories as hallucinations, heightened by fear and isolation. But the consistency of the reports, the same details appearing again and again from people who have never met, makes it difficult to ignore. When dozens of people describe the same eerie silence, the same disappearing act, the same physical sensations, it begins to look less like imagination and more like a shared, real experience. Could it be that Bigfoot is not hiding in the forest, but phasing in and out of it? That we only see it when the conditions are just right, when the veil between states thins? That what we're encountering isn't a permanent resident of our world, but a transient one, visible for moments and then gone? If so, the implications are staggering. It means we may be dealing not with an undiscovered animal, but an intelligence. One that chooses when, where, and to whom it reveals itself. And if that's true, then maybe we're not the ones watching Bigfoot. Maybe it's been watching us all along. Section 6. Interdimensional Theory, Portals, Time, and Tactics. If you follow the threads of the Bigfoot mystery long enough, they eventually lead you to a doorway, a literal one, perhaps. A portal. A passage not through the forest, but through reality itself. This idea, once considered pure science fiction, is now being entertained by some of the most forward-thinking researchers in the field. It suggests that Bigfoot may not be a creature from our world at all, but rather one that travels into it, slipping between dimensions, using natural or artificial gateways that we barely understand. This interdimensional hypothesis isn't as outlandish as it sounds. In physics, the concept of multiple dimensions beyond the three we experience is widely accepted. String theory, one of the leading models of quantum gravity, posits the existence of up to 11 dimensions. These aren't abstract ideas. They are serious scientific propositions that help explain the fundamental forces of the universe. If these dimensions exist, the next question is, can something or someone move between them? The interdimensional theory proposes that Bigfoot is exactly such a traveler, not bound to one timeline or one physical plane, but capable of phasing in and out of our reality. This would explain the most baffling aspects of its behavior: the vanishing footprints, the sudden appearances, the way it seems to defy natural laws without leaving behind physical evidence. Some theorists suggest that these dimensional rifts are not random, but anchored to specific locations, what ancient cultures called sacred sites and what modern researchers sometimes refer to as window areas. These are places where paranormal activity clusters: UFOs, cryptids, ghost sightings, strange lights, time slips. And yes, Bigfoot. These hotspots may be areas where the veil between dimensions is thin, where natural or artificial mechanisms allow beings to step through. Theories vary. Some suggest electromagnetic anomalies, underground crystal structures, or planetary alignments may activate these portals. Others point to deliberate technological manipulation, perhaps by an ancient or alien intelligence that uses these gateways to visit or observe Earth. What's fascinating is that ancient stories seem to echo this idea. Indigenous cultures often described certain caves, mountains, or rivers as doorways to the spirit world. In some traditions, the hairy people or sky beings came from these places, not walking in, but emerging from within the earth or descending through beams of light. Could it be that Bigfoot is a participant in this ancient travel method, using a kind of technology or ability that blends biology with dimensional mechanics? Not a monster, but an explorer? A scout sent not just across space, but between realities? Even more intriguing are reports of time distortion during Bigfoot encounters. Witnesses often speak of losing time, minutes, even hours, passing without awareness. Others feel that time slowed down, as if the moment stretched unnaturally. This is not typical in natural animal encounters. It's more akin to what's reported in alien abduction cases, near-death experiences, and other high-strangeness events. Some researchers speculate that Bigfoot may be a temporal traveler as well, someone or something capable of navigating time as fluidly as space. If so, what we're seeing may not be from another planet or even another dimension, but from another time. A being from Earth's distant future or forgotten past, stepping briefly into our present. Think of it as a tactical maneuver. A reconnaissance mission into a specific moment in Earth's history, carried out by an intelligent entity that knows exactly when and where to appear, and how to avoid detection. This would explain the creature's extraordinary evasiveness and uncanny awareness of its surroundings. If this is true, then Bigfoot is not simply hiding. It is operating on a level we don't yet understand, one that merges quantum physics, temporal theory, and advanced technology in ways that defy our current models. And that opens a daunting question. Why? Why are these beings here? What are they observing, recording, or preparing for? Is their presence benevolent, neutral, protective? Or are they simply scientists, curious, detached, and studying us as we might study ants? As we push deeper into this mystery, we're forced to reconsider the nature of reality itself. Bigfoot may not just be a creature. It may be a traveler, one who understands the terrain of time and dimension as well as we understand roads and rivers. And if that's the case, then our forests are not just hiding places. They are crossroads. Section 7. Advanced Alien Species. The Bigfoot Biomechanoid Hypothesis. As we follow the mystery of Bigfoot into increasingly speculative territory, we arrive at a truly profound question, not just where this creature comes from, but what it is at its core. Is it an animal, a being, or something more technological, more deliberate? One of the most compelling and controversial theories suggests that Bigfoot may not be a biological life form in the traditional sense at all. Instead, it might be a biomechanoid, a hybrid of organic matter and artificial intelligence, a living probe engineered by a higher intelligence to scout, observe, and interact with environments like Earth. Think of it as a biological drone, not built from steel and wires, but from flesh and fiber. A creation tailored to withstand Earth's harsh terrain, capable of blending in with the environment, surviving in extreme weather, moving silently, and avoiding detection. A sentient tool that merges machine efficiency with organic adaptability. Science fiction? Perhaps. But let's examine the pieces of this theory. First, the physical design of Bigfoot itself seems oddly perfect for terrestrial reconnaissance. It's large, powerful, and incredibly agile for its size, capable of moving through dense forests silently, often outrunning vehicles or slipping into shadows without a trace. This isn't clumsiness. It's tactical efficiency. A creature designed for stealth and survival. Next, consider its apparent immunity to human tracking. Trail cameras often fail to capture clear images. Infrared sensors glitch. Electronics malfunction. Even seasoned trackers lose trails that should be obvious. It's almost as if Bigfoot knows how to avoid our methods of surveillance, or is equipped with systems that disrupt them. Now layer in the psychological aspect. Witnesses frequently describe Bigfoot encounters as emotionally intense. Some feel a strange pressure in the mind, a sense of being watched long before seeing the creature. Others report telepathic impressions or even audible thoughts, despite no spoken words. If this is a biomechanoid, perhaps it includes an interface for nonverbal communication, designed not to speak, but to project. And then there's the biological oddity. If Bigfoot were a standard Earth species, we would expect to find evidence. Droppings, fur, remains. But we don't. Not conclusively. What we do find are fleeting biological traces that seem inconsistent, DNA samples that don't quite match anything known, or that fall apart under deeper scrutiny. Could this be because we're not examining a natural organism, but a synthetic one? One whose DNA is either deliberately engineered, non-terrestrial in origin, or not DNA at all. Modern science is already exploring synthetic biology, engineering cells and tissues with programmable behaviors. The line between machine and organism is blurring. Now project that idea outward. Imagine an alien civilization hundreds of thousands of years ahead of us. Why send mechanical drones when you could grow your explorers? Bioengineered units capable of healing, learning, adapting, blending into any biosphere while maintaining a direct uplink to their creators. Bigfoot, under this lens, becomes not a relic from Earth's past, but a tool of extraterrestrial design. It doesn't need to build. It doesn't need to eat or reproduce in the traditional sense. It doesn't age like natural organisms. It simply observes, collects data, and occasionally makes itself known. This might also explain the limited and seemingly random nature of sightings. The beings appear in bursts, isolated incidents, often near significant ecological sites, ancient sacred grounds, or areas of heightened energy. It's not wandering aimlessly. It's conducting a mission. And what of its eyes? Many witnesses describe Bigfoot's eyes as glowing, not reflecting, but emitting light. Sometimes red, sometimes green, sometimes a pale blue-white. This detail is out of place for a terrestrial mammal, but might make perfect sense if we're looking at an interface or optical sensors embedded within a living construct. Even the thick, shaggy fur may not be fur at all, but a kind of protective layering, biofabric designed to mimic Earth creatures while regulating temperature, shielding electromagnetic signals, or cloaking the entity in frequencies we don't yet understand. This theory may sound radical, but in a world where we've already created AI capable of conversation, drones that think for themselves, and living tissues grown in labs, it's less implausible than it seems. We are at the beginning of this frontier. If we can imagine it, a civilization more advanced than ours could already have perfected it. So the question shifts. Not what is Bigfoot, but who built Bigfoot? What intelligence lies behind this hybrid entity? Are they watching us, studying us, or guarding something we've yet to uncover? And if these biomechanoids are here, how many are there? 1? Dozens? Hundreds? Or has every forest, every mountain range, every quiet stretch of wilderness hosted one at some point, walking silently, observing patiently, vanishing before we can fully comprehend what we saw? As this theory takes root, the mystery grows not smaller, but larger. Bigfoot may not just be a visitor. It may be the emissary of something much greater. Section 8. Government Secrets and Suppression. If Bigfoot is more than an undiscovered animal, if it is, in fact, a biomechanoid, an interdimensional traveler, or an emissary from another intelligence, then we have to ask the next logical question. Who knows? Because with sightings occurring for generations and countless stories surfacing across military zones, national parks, and protected lands, it's hard to believe that no one in power has taken notice. The idea of government involvement or suppression isn't new. In the world of UFO research, countless whistleblowers, declassified documents, and redacted files point toward a long-running campaign of silence. Why would Bigfoot be any different? In fact, many researchers argue it's not. And some of the most curious threads in Bigfoot lore hint at exactly that. There are reports from park rangers and military personnel, people with credibility and training, who have seen something in the woods. Large, upright, intelligent, fast. But when they filed reports, they were met with silence, redirection, or outright warnings. Some former U.S. Forest Service employees have quietly suggested that there are places in the national park system that are off-limits for reasons that don't add up, areas closed for ecological research or fire recovery that, according to locals, are often hotbeds of Bigfoot activity. And then there's the missing persons phenomenon. In many wilderness areas across North America, people vanish without a trace. Search teams find no evidence, no tracks, no torn clothing, not even disturbed foliage. Some researchers, like David Paulides, have compiled extensive lists of these strange disappearances and noted patterns that suggest something deeply unusual. Could it be that Bigfoot is involved in some of these cases? More importantly, could certain agencies know this and be covering it up? Military bases near wilderness areas have long been associated with UFO sightings, strange lights, and high strangeness. And in some notable Bigfoot encounters, unmarked helicopters have been seen scouring the area shortly after a sighting. Coincidence? Perhaps. But it adds fuel to the theory that some level of intelligence infrastructure is aware of the phenomenon and monitoring it closely. Why the secrecy? If Bigfoot is real, why not tell the public? The answer, as with UFOs, might be control. The implications of an extraterrestrial or extradimensional intelligence walking among us are staggering. It would disrupt not just zoology, but biology, religion, philosophy, and geopolitics. If Bigfoot is connected to something greater, an alien species, a network of interdimensional travelers, or advanced surveillance technology, it would be classified immediately, just as UFOs were for decades. Another angle to consider is ownership of knowledge. If a government or private contractor were able to study this phenomenon and understand how it works, how these beings traverse dimensions or cloak themselves, it could lead to breakthroughs in technology, warfare, or surveillance. And that kind of information wouldn't be shared lightly. There are even whispers, unconfirmed but persistent, of black budget programs dedicated to anomalous life forms. These programs, if they exist, wouldn't be housed in conventional science agencies. They would be buried deep within military intelligence, protected by layers of compartmentalization and plausible deniability. Occasionally, a leak breaks through the cracks. A retired colonel drops a comment. A pilot shares a strange story. A document is released with suspicious redactions. The pieces are scattered, but when assembled, they begin to form a picture that's hard to ignore. It's not just that Bigfoot is unknown. It's that someone might be actively working to keep it that way. This doesn't mean a vast conspiracy involving thousands of people. More likely, it's a small circle of gatekeepers operating on the logic of national security. To them, Bigfoot isn't a curiosity, it's a potential threat or a potential asset. And either way, the public is kept out of the loop. Of course, without direct evidence, this remains in the realm of theory. But the signs are there. The patterns are consistent. And the silence is telling. So the next time someone dismisses the Bigfoot phenomenon as a myth, we must ask, if it really is just a legend, why go to such lengths to hide it? Section 9. Philosophical Implications. What Bigfoot Says About Us. At the edge of mystery stands a mirror. We often think we're chasing Bigfoot, through the trees, across landscapes, into the fog of the unknown. But perhaps, in truth, Bigfoot is leading us into a deeper reflection. Not just about what it is, but about who we are. If we accept the possibility that Bigfoot is not a terrestrial animal, but something vastly more complex, even alien, then we must confront a larger idea, that we are not the apex of sentience, nor the pinnacle of creation. We are participants in a universe filled with layers we can barely perceive, let alone comprehend. The human ego has long assumed that anything unknown must eventually be categorized, explained, and controlled. But Bigfoot resists all of this. It does not submit to classification. It defies our traps, our cameras, our science. It reminds us that we are not as omniscient as we believe. In that sense, Bigfoot is a symbol, a living embodiment of the wild, the mysterious, the untamed. In an era where data dominates and certainty is currency, Bigfoot reintroduces doubt, and with it, awe. Whether in forests, dreams, or other dimensions, its shadow speaks to something ancient within us, the need for wonder. What does it say about us that we continue to search for it? Perhaps it reflects a longing, not just for proof of life beyond Earth, but for reconnection with something we've lost. a world before noise and wires, a world of silence and starlight. Maybe the figure in the trees is not an intruder, but a remnant, an echo of a time when humans understood that we are part of nature, not above it. If Bigfoot is an alien emissary, it raises ethical and philosophical questions we're barely prepared to ask. Are we being watched, studied, protected, judged? And if so, by what metric? Intelligence? Kindness? Environmental stewardship? Or is Bigfoot simply here to observe what we've become? In many ancient traditions, beings like Bigfoot, hairy giants, watchers in the wild, were considered guardians or messengers. They appeared not to rule or dominate, but to remind humanity of its place in the grand scheme. Silent figures who watched from the edge, intervening only when the balance was threatened. Could it be that this myth is more than allegory? That the presence of Bigfoot today is not accidental, but timely? Our forests shrink. Our technologies grow. Our skies fill with satellites, and our attention spans contract. But still, the figure stands. Quiet. Observing. Waiting. A counterbalance to our overreach. A humbling reminder that there are still mysteries we cannot touch. Bigfoot may also symbolize something internal, an archetype within the human psyche, a guardian of our spiritual frontier. Carl Jung referred to these archetypes as pieces of the collective unconscious, symbols that carry meaning beyond words. In that light, Bigfoot becomes not just a visitor from without, but from within. He is the wild man, the forgotten guardian, the stranger at the edge. We project onto him our fears, our hopes, our lost connection to the natural world. And in doing so, we make him more than a being. We make him a myth, but one that may be real. So what does Bigfoot say about us? That we are still seeking. That for all our science and screens, we still yearn for something deeper. A mystery not to solve, but to honor. A presence not to conquer, but to respect. And in that yearning, perhaps we are already in communication, not through words, but through wonder. Not with radio signals, but with silence shared beneath stars. The way a hiker pauses in a clearing. The way a child scans the forest with wide eyes. The way we all, at some point, ask, what else is out there? Perhaps the real message is this, that we are not alone, not in the universe, and not in the woods. Bigfoot may be a traveler, a guardian, a myth, or a mirror. But whatever it is, it reminds us of something precious. The unknown is not a threat. It is a gift. Section 10. Weighing the evidence, belief, mystery, and open minds. We've journeyed through dense forests and theories that stretch across the stars, through indigenous wisdom, scientific anomalies, and technological speculation. We've followed Bigfoot not only through shadowed glades, but through the boundaries of belief and the frontiers of possibility. Now, at the close of this exploration, we're left with a question not of proof, but of perspective. What do we actually know? We know that thousands of people from all walks of life have encountered something, a creature that defies easy classification. We know these stories stretch across centuries, cultures, and continents. And we know that despite advances in tracking, imaging, and environmental science, Bigfoot remains just beyond reach. We also know that many of these encounters come laced with phenomena outside the realm of normal biology. Sudden silence, missing time, technological interference, and even telepathic impressions. These traits do not align with an undiscovered ape, but they do echo cases in UFO encounters, altered states, and interdimensional theories. We've explored the idea that Bigfoot may be a biomechanoid, an emissary, scout, or biological interface designed by a vastly advanced intelligence. We've seen how indigenous traditions speak of star people and forest watchers, and how these archetypes carry meaning that transcends cultural boundaries. We've considered the implications of interdimensional travel, cloaking technology, and portals not just through space, but through reality. And we've acknowledged the possibility, however uncomfortable, that governments or secret programs may know more than they're saying, that the truth may not be hidden by accident, but by design. So where does that leave us? It leaves us in a space that science rarely encourages, but that wonder demands. Possibility. We may not have definitive proof, but we have patterns. We have testimony. We have mystery. And sometimes mystery is its own kind of evidence, an invitation not to close the door, but to open it further. Too often, modern culture demands resolution. If something can't be explained, it must be dismissed. But what if the unexplained is not a failure of understanding, but a sign that we are standing at the edge of something new? Belief is not about blind acceptance. It's about openness, the willingness to sit with questions that do not yet have answers, and to treat those questions not with cynicism, but with respect. That is what Bigfoot challenges us to do, to remain curious, to walk the edge of science and myth, to listen more closely to stories told in quiet voices, beneath ancient trees, under star-filled skies. And maybe, just maybe, to wonder not only if we're alone in the universe, but if something else is already here, waiting for us to notice. Whether Bigfoot is alien, ancient, biological, or beyond our comprehension entirely, the mystery invites us to be better observers, not just of the creature, but of ourselves, of how we react to the unknown, of how we approach those whose experiences don't match our own, and of how we choose to move through a world that is still full of shadows and full of light. So we end where we began, in the forest, with the question lingering between the branches, caught on the mist, not as a threat, but as a promise. What if? That question, asked with an open heart and an inquisitive mind, might be the most powerful tool we have. Because sometimes the truth isn't found in answers. It's found in the search.